All right, for my comprehension of a narrative text strategy, I did spin the discussion, and it's for grades 1 through 8. So it's really wide range. There's a bunch of different things you could do with it. Like, because obviously what you do with first grader is not going to be the same as what you do with an 8th grader. So this strategy is used like instead of literal questioning, you know, just sitting there asking students questions and making them give your answer or write an answer. And it's like using your prompts to discuss the things that are in the books, and it encourages collaboration and working with your peers. So the main like big idea behind this strategy is that it builds the comprehension of the book, the narrative book that the student is reading. So what you do is you have a spinner. I don't have a little spinner thing because I didn't know how to make one, but you would have a spinner, and there's 4 sections. So there's rich language, theme, synopsis, and point of view. And the synopsis, if they landed on synopsis, they would tell in their words what happened, so kind of like a summary in their own words. The rich language, they would give examples of like different kinds of words the author used, like metaphors, personification, alliteration, any of those terms that they have learned about. And then the third one is point of view, so they just explain which point of view the story is from. And then the last one is theme, and so they talk about the theme that was in the text. So obviously it has, for 1st through 8th grade, they're going to be different levels of, like, a 8th grader is going to be able to go way more into theme than a 1st grader would. So it's just altering the assessment or altering the activity for whatever grade you're in. So thinking about younger grades, I thought that it would be useful to do maybe in a small group with your students. You can monitor the discussion and you would read the book to them, especially if it was K or 1, 2. If it was a tougher book, you would read the book to them and they would listen, and then they would spin the thing. Whatever they landed on, they would do. And then you would talk about it, and then your partners can either extend on what you said or spin it again if they don't have anything to say, and they would move on to the next one. So after the discussion would just go on until you've covered all the 4 different topics. So for older grades, I thought you could do it with maybe a literature circle where the students choose their own books. So if you have 4 different books and they all have to choose one, you could put the students in the groups based on their book like you do, and then they would each have their own spinner, and you could let them have free reign of the discussion. They would be old enough to know what, like 4th, 5th through 8th, I think they would be responsible enough to do their own discussion and each take a turn doing the parts and making sure that everything is covered. So I thought this was a really good activity because even all grades, you could get different viewpoints. You know, someone might think of a theme as different than someone else might, or someone might have a little bit of different point of view on the point of view. Just different viewpoints on the same thing can help students see other people's viewpoints and also argue against or for what they think. This would be a good way to encourage collaboration and ultimately mastery and comprehension of the text. So for assessment, there's many different things you could do with this, but I thought for informally, obviously you could just be listening, especially if you're in the small group in the younger grades. You could just listen to what they were saying and redirect if something isn't quite right, and you'd be there to monitor and kind of guide the discussion. So you would just be able to listen to what they were saying. You would be able to see who was getting it and who wasn't, and then you could take your next steps according to who was getting it, who wasn't, if they all were, if none of them were, just based on the results based on the things that you hear while you're listening. And then for the upper grades, since you're not necessarily in a group with those students, you could just walk around the room. Like we always talk about informal assessment, students are always going to be more apt to say something in a small group with their friends likely. So you'll be able to see really what they are thinking about the text and what they're learning and the different 4 parts, if they're getting it right or if they're off. And you can even mold instruction after that. Even though you're not in the group with them, you can still wander around the room and listen to what people are saying. So for a formal assessment, I was thinking that after using this spinner thing as a means of a discussion starter and like making students actually discuss it. You could have them write a quick little paragraph or a summary of each of the 4 parts, or like for rich language you could have them write examples of the rich language and what kind of language it was. Like if it was personification, they could write the word and they would put personification next to it so they would know and maybe be able to refer back to that later if they wanted to use personification in one of their writings. So for theme, they could just talk about the theme. Synopsis would just be a quick summary paragraph, and then the point of view, they could talk about the point of view of the book and how that kind of shapes the book. So that would be something. Obviously a first grader's not gonna be able to write a paragraph, second grader either. So you could just have them write a few words or a sentence, or you could even just let them say it to you. Like just since you're in a small group with them, you would be able to assess that very easily without having them write. So ultimately I thought this was a good activity, kind of a fun. It would be like a board game because you would have a spinner, which I don't have, but you would have a spinner, and it would be, they would have to know what to say for all 4 of them because they never know what they're going to land on. And you would be able to see if students were confused or if there was something missing, the dots weren't connecting, and you'd be able to jump in and try to connect those dots for them. And ultimately it would help them with their comprehension. So if they're not getting something that their friend is getting, they'll hear it in the discussion and they'll be able to apply it to their thinking. So just anything that would help comprehension, I think this is a good activity, and it's so broad that you can, 1st through 8th grade, you can do a lot of different things with it. So